All right, what's going on, everybody? Here to talk about Section 8 rental, how I do it, and you can do it too. Took me a long time to figure out this real estate game, but I really found my niche or niche when I started to rent out to Section 8 families. I didn't know this, obviously, at the very beginning. I kind of fell into it by trial and error as far as the Section 8 part. But I remember having a tenant in there in one of my properties that I purchased, and I had a tenant in there, and they were only in there for 6 months. I had a 12-month lease, but they had to break the lease at 6 months, and the reason why is because she worked for the school district as a bus driver, and unfortunately, they laid her off. She wanted to stay on the property, but she couldn't, and she wouldn't be able to pay me if she'd gotten laid off. So that's what happened. And once she got laid off, my property stayed vacant for about a month, and I went back to my mentor and I says, "Hey, look, what can I do here? Because this is not working." And that's when he told me about Section 8. And I was like, well, Section 8, I don't know if I want to do that. I heard all the bad stuff about it, but he was like an expert at it and he taught me on it. And I haven't looked back since. I remember getting my first tenant, Miss Walker, and she was on Section 8. I remember filling out the paperwork, going down to the housing authority, and then they came back, did an inspection on the property. It was much quicker back then because the waiting list wasn't that long. And I just remember her getting into my property, and she stayed in there for 2 years straight. And I remember getting paid every single month guaranteed. And that was the winner right there. And while I had that property for 2 years, and while she was still paying me, or the government was still paying me, I liked it so much. I went ahead and bought me some more properties within that time because I finally broke the code because I says, you know what, my properties won't go vacant anymore, because that was one of the biggest fears I had when starting out in real estate was I didn't want my properties to go vacant. Everybody has that fear. But I was able to crack the code by learning about Section 8. And once you understand the ins and outs, I guarantee you, you'll have the unfair advantage against other landlords and investors. So I just haven't looked back since getting Section 8 families in my properties. I also do different ones. I do traveling nurses and insurance companies, but my favorite one, I'll be honest with you, is Section 8. So just doing real estate ahead in itself has been a change in my life, and I'm glad I did it. I just never forget being laid off from corporate America. And when I got laid off from corporate America, I'm gonna tell you that was a blow. That was a huge blow, and it was scary back then. I just remember being laid off, um, not knowing which direction to go. I had two kids and a wife, and I was like, "Wow, what am I gonna do?" My wife wasn't working because she was a stay-at-home mom. She did work because taking care of kids is always, and two loved ones is always a challenge. She just wasn't getting paid for it. But um, having one income was a game changer. That's what changed my mindset. Now I didn't directly go straight into real estate. What I did was I went and got me another job in the same field, working as an operator at the plants. I made great money. I just wasn't happy there. My I just didn't have a whole lot of time, right? My time was spent at corporate America more than it was at home. I didn't even know who I was at some point. I didn't even know who my family was because I was spending more time at work than I was at home. But I started to get into real estate. But when I got that second job, after getting back on my feet after getting laid off, that was the game changer. And I remember saying to myself, I will never get myself in that position again to where I'm so dependent on corporate America. Oh my goodness. That is definitely like I call that financial suicide. When you depend on one stream of income and it's not even your company, that's dangerous. See, they don't tell us that in school, and they don't tell us that when you start working for somebody because it's not your company. They can do what they want whenever they feel like it. And I got to experience that at a young age of 25 years old. But like I said earlier, I says, man, that was the game changer for me. That's what changed everything for me and my mindset. And I said, I don't want to ever go through that again. They never, it's business, right? I didn't do anything wrong. They just decided to downsize, and I was collateral damage. And same with myself and 9 other employees that came in at the same time. I was only there for a year, but it was a game changer for me. I couldn't have learned that at any college. No university was going to teach me that about getting laid off or what to do next. I had to figure it out on my own. And at that time, when I got laid off after being there for a year, I thought I was settled in, for a time I was. And I remember buying a brand new $75,000 home, which I still have today. I remember getting me another car. So that made our second car, and everything was being financed. And I remember, wow, man, life is moving fast. And yeah, I just remember getting laid off, and that was a tremendous blow. I remember telling myself I could become bitter or I could become better, and I chose to become better. But I'll just never forget those days. But I always tell people, when it comes to real estate, at least have it as a backup plan. At least have something as a backup plan. It's funny how we go through life and we're so dependent on other people, and we don't really look to say, hey, wait, what happens if this corporate America job, which I do not own, what happens if they decide to lay me off? Do you have a backup plan? You got to really ask yourself that question. Do you have anything to fall back on? And I wish I did. When I'd gotten laid off, I would have had a better transition. But most people only have one stream of income. And again, that's financial suicide right there. And then the problem is, because I was headed down that road too, that I was going to depend on that one income all the way until retirement, all the way until 67 and a half years old. Scary. And then once you retire, guess what? Your income doesn't go up. It significantly comes down. And that's what I didn't make it to retirement because I'm not 67 and a half, but I got to do it earlier because I had a backup plan. And I made my backup plan my main plan. So I just watched people and I was like, wow, especially people at my job